this may be the new quote unquote cycle. Is this oscillation, Bitcoin goes up 50%, we spend 6 to 8 months consolidating, coins exchanging hands, a new bottom being found. And I think this could happen all the way to $1 million. You've got people debating on op return, like you said, you've got the knots versus core war, but in terms of retail, like degenerates investing, Bitcoin is not volatile enough for them anymore. Like they say, markets always find the path of most resistance. I think that's stair-stepping higher. I think it's boring people out, consolidating and having good returns by traditional standards, but low returns by Bitcoin standards. So they also have passive flows. So they're creating support to the downside too, which is why I don't think we'll get a massive drawdown. I mean, we could drop 30% in 2026. That wouldn't surprise me, but I really doubt we drop 75%. I think those days are over. Everyone, green, 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 red has been the standard, but I think we're going to go green, 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 at least, for the foreseeable future. I don't think there's any bearish catalyst for Bitcoin on the horizon. So I think the 4-year cycle breaks to the upside for sure.
I think we can just directly start into with that because I think this is such an important and often asked topic. I just talked with Jim Grider. He's a financial advisor, and he is talking with a lot of Bitcoiners or like newbies in Bitcoin, and he said me the same question that Morgan Rochard actually also told me. She's also a financial advisor, talks a lot with people, and they both told me the questions they get most often is like, will this 4-year cycle continue? Like this seems to be the pressing question of 2025. Will 2026 be a down year, a up year? Will it be a bullish year? Like what's going on? So maybe let's just directly jump into that question of like, what do you expect from 2026?
I expect it to be a bullish year because what we could do is we could rewind for a second and think about what catalyzed the previous cycles and the cyclical behavior in Bitcoin, where you get a blow off top and then a 75% drawdown. One catalyst was the halvings, of course, affecting the supply demand balance of Bitcoin. So when the amount of Bitcoin getting mined per day or per block, it's 50 Bitcoin per block every 10 minutes from 2009 to 2012. And then you went to 25 Bitcoin per block. Now, relative to the existing amount of Bitcoin in supply, that was a noticeable impact on supply and demand versus the 2024 halving, just from a pure numbers perspective, really doesn't have a big impact on Bitcoin supply and demand balance because we went from 900 Bitcoin a day to 450 versus, you have long-term holders selling hundreds of thousands of dollars a coin, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin per month after certain rallies. You've got Sailor buying thousands of Bitcoin all the time. So that marginal change really doesn't affect the balance too much, in my opinion. And so the catalyst for Bitcoin now from a supply side is holders. So we can see on chain how responsive holders are to changes in the price. And then from a demand side, you have the institutional corporate adoption theme, which I think I don't want to say it's been beat to death, but people have talked about that a lot. The Bitcoin treasuries, the ETFs, the strategies of the world, nation states potentially. So you have like adoption, but then you also have on the demand side, global liquidity. And global liquidity has been straight up and to the right all year long. Doesn't seem like that train is slowing down at all. I think gold's outperformance this year, gold is up 45%, something ridiculous for gold. I think that's a telltale sign for Bitcoin that Bitcoin's going to follow suit. So the primary catalyst I'm looking at now to kind of guide, I guess, for a 12-month time horizon would be how are holders moving coins on chain? Are we seeing long-term holders sell? Are we seeing them accumulate? And then what's global liquidity doing? And then does this trend of institutional adoption slow down? I don't think the trend of institutional adoption slows down, and I don't think the fiat money printing and liquidity expansion slows down either. So then that only leaves the holders, which is, we can get into that deeper, and I do in the report. But overall, I'm definitely bullish on Bitcoin's price action in 2026.
It's amazing to see because I think, and it's hard for me because like we have that 4-year cycle. And it's for me magical to see that we even have a 4-year cycle already so long. We are now 16 years into Bitcoin and it never broke. It's kind of like, how did this even start? Like, why did we even had this 4-year cycle in the beginning? Of course, like the mining cycle. But like, why even have this negative year? Because we had we always had a lot of reasons why it should not stay that way. We could also just like blow through it. But now, as you also said, I have a very hard time believing that 2026 will be a down year, just because we don't have anything negative on the horizon. Like last cycles, we always had something like FTX or like Celsius or like something big happening that's bad. We have the Tesla thing in 2021, the China ban in 2021. Like we always had something that is like, oh yeah, like there's something that people are really afraid of. There's nothing that is really bad for Bitcoin currently. Like I've really thought about it. Like, what of news piece in 2025 was bad for Bitcoin? Like, I couldn't think of anything that is remotely bad. I mean, of course, you could interpret like, oh yeah, like there is some small thing and this is a bad indicator for Bitcoin, but there's nothing really happening. Maybe I'm missing something, but like, I haven't thought anything that is bad for Bitcoin in 2025.
No, I can't really think of anything either, to be quite honest. And if we think back to the last cycle, the 2021 cycle, that was not a Bitcoin specific bull run. We had the money supply expand by 50% in a year and everything went up. Everything was a euphoric top in stocks and tech and Bitcoin and NFTs, and the entire world was in, I think they call it the everything bubble. And then in 2022, Powell slams on the brake, hikes interest rates up faster than they've ever been hiked up before. All the leverage that was built up from the easy money sloshing around got totally wiped out. Bitcoin crashed. Everything crashed. So that cycle you can attribute a lot of that to simply the COVID monetary stimulus. Versus now, I don't know if you feel this way, but it feels like almost bear market vibes in a way. Even though there's been no news, it's been a long summer of Bitcoin just going sideways and everyone waiting for this magical blow off top. We had kind of Bitcoin Treasury mania back in May when the Bitcoin conference happened, but June, July, August, we're halfway through September already, hasn't been any euphoria. We're just sitting around twiddling our thumbs. I mean, the Fed meets today. Everybody's been waiting for that next catalyst macro wise. Like, is the Fed going to cut rates? It seems like they are, but how fast are they going to do it? I think we do get another series of interest rate cuts to close out the year. And I think Bitcoin will perform very strong going into the end of the year. But unless we see some kind of really mass euphoric moment, I don't expect there to be a major pullback going into 2026. And even just since the ETFs were created, since January 2024, Bitcoin has not had a drawdown more than 30%, peak to trough. It peaked at 74K in March of 2024, and in August it hit around 50K. So that was a 30% drop. But that's been the biggest drop. I'm very confident we're beyond the days of this 75% drawdown, massive, devastating bear market.
It's interesting when you say it feels like a bear market, because it actually does, but only if you don't look at the price.
Right.
Like the last 12 months, we have been up 99%. So we doubled over the last 12 months. How the heck does this feel like a bear market? Like it's crazy for me, but the sentiment is that way. I saw it today just in a group chat of a small Bitcoin group here in Europe. A few hundred people are in there, and someone was like, "Oh, I'm waiting for Bitcoin to rip like gold did," and I'm like, "We are ripping since 16 years." like we are going up in a straight line since 16 years. And in the last 12 months, we are up 100%. In the last 5 years, I don't even know, like the last 5 years are up 942%, which is
crazy.
That's a good performance.
Yeah.
If we keep up the 99% CAGR over the next 5 years, we will end up at like 1, 2, 3, 4, what is it? 3 million? 3.6 million, something like that, if my math is correct. But it's crazy. Like a 99% CAGR is, in my opinion, unrealistic long term, and it's also really, really bullish. But at the same time, the sentiment is kind of low. And my thinking, I'm curious what you think about that, is also maybe it's because retail isn't that much into the cycle, and it's more about institutional money and like seller buying and like companies buying and treasury companies. It feels like there's no euphoria, and this might just be a good thing. Like we don't have like crazy ICOs or like NFTs or anything like that. We get so bored that we debate about op return now. It's like it's crazy for me how this all shakes out.
Right. I think you're spot on. Bitcoin, I don't remember who coined this. It might have been Joe Carlasari, said Bitcoin's going to bore us to death on the way to $1 million. And I feel that right now. It's been, you've got people debating on op return, like you said, you've got the knots versus core war. But in terms of retail, like degenerates investing, Bitcoin is not volatile enough for them anymore. I think that's part of why we've seen a rise in the Bitcoin treasury companies. You've got a cohort of investors that's searching for more volatility. But then you also have a cohort of investors, the ones with the money that move the markets, that are searching for less volatility. So these institutional investors you alluded to. And I think Bitcoin is, and the on-chain data supports this, and we can dive deep into the report where I analyze some of this, but the new cohort of Bitcoin investors, they want lower vol, and it's creating this feedback loop where Bitcoin's, obviously volatile relative to stocks and bonds, but relative to Bitcoin's history, its volatility is diminishing. But this is going to create a feedback loop where, because Bitcoin is less volatile, it's more stable, more liquidity, more volume, more institutions then have the green light to get into the asset, which perpetuates that diminishing volatility relative to Bitcoin's history. And so what you see here is this orange area shows the 30-day change in long-term holder supply. And you'll notice in each of the past bull markets and the bull cycles, you have a huge spike. So that's long-term holders selling into Bitcoin price appreciation. So Bitcoin, unique asset class, you can never make more than 21 million. So there's really only one way for new demand to find supply, and that's to bid the price higher. Now, historically, you had to bid the price up 10x before Bitcoin holders would part with their coins. You needed to send Bitcoin from 3K to 60K in 2021 to get long-term holders to sell. But what you've seen since the ETFs were created, so that gray area to the right, is you don't have to bid the Bitcoin price as high to get long-term holders to sell. So we went from 40K to 60K in Q1 of 2024, and you got almost an equivalent amount of Bitcoin sold into the market from these long-term holders. And then again, in Q4 of last year, we went from 60K to 90K. You got a big chunk of long-term holders willing to sell. And here again, from this, rise off the April lows of 80K to 125K, you got long-term holders selling again. And my hypothesis behind this is these institutional participants that came from the ETF, they didn't exist before it because they're not going on Strike or River or Coinbase and buying Bitcoin and taking it in self-custody. They're using their Fidelity account, their Schwab account, their existing setup to get Bitcoin exposure. This new market participant, they're used to 10% gains in the S&P on a good year or 5% in treasury bonds. And so if they hold Bitcoin for 6 months, on chain, they're categorized as a long-term holder. That's the threshold. But if Bitcoin goes up 50% in 6 months, that's like their entire, that's 10 years worth of performance for them relatively. So that's an amazing return. So they're going to sell Bitcoin into the market on a 50% gain versus the old holder needed a 10x. They only need a 1.5x. And so the on-chain data here shows that behavior. And so this is why I think Bitcoin is going to continue to stair step higher. What we've seen since the ETF, you can look at the black line Bitcoin price chart. We go up and then we consolidate. We go up and we consolidate. We go up and we consolidate. And I think this may be the new quote unquote cycle, is this oscillation. Bitcoin goes up 50%. We spend 6 to 8 months consolidating, coins exchanging hands, a new bottom being found. And I think this could happen all the way to $1 million, 20 to 50% CAGR per year. It's still fantastic returns. When you do the math, it's like, yeah, this is great. This is going to be a great return. But people are so high time preference. They want that massive blow off parabolic top or a huge drawdown where they can go in and time the bottom and get a quick return that way. But I think the way Bitcoin really causes the most damage, or they say markets always find the path of most resistance. I think that's stair stepping higher. I think it's boring people out, consolidating, and having good returns by traditional standards, but low returns by Bitcoin standards.
Yeah, and a lot of people asking like, oh, like with all those positive news out there, with like nothing negative holding us back, like why aren't we higher? Like why aren't we ripping? And I mean, October, November, December are still coming, and it's like the usual, like October, November, December is usually really a good months. But is what you're also saying is that 2025 will not be as crazy, but it will also have 2026 be a good year. So we don't have like a blow off top in 2025 and also no crash in 2026, which is like the bad one is we don't have the euphoria going up crazy and we don't have the depression afterwards.
Yeah, precisely. And if you think about this, kind of works in the inverse. So the new traditional financial types that are in Bitcoin and kind of driving the market now, they'll sell into a 50% gain, and that's why we consolidate after a move up. But they also have passive flows, so they're creating support to the downside too, which is why I don't think we'll get a massive drawdown. I mean, we could drop 30% in 2026. That wouldn't surprise me, but I really doubt we drop 75%. I think those days are over.
It's also interesting. I think you also, I'll bring up the report again. Oh gosh, like my buttons are all weird here.
Oh, you're good.
Here we go. You also compare that to other digital monopolies. Like, how do you do that?
Yes. So Bitcoin, obviously super unique, one of one, no apples to apples comparison. But the market has always treated it like a highly volatile tech stock. So Bitcoin trades, Bitcoin had a 75% drop in 2022, but so did Apple and some of these others. I don't think Apple dropped 75%, but it had a large drop. Tesla dropped. Bitcoin's traded very similar to other world-changing digital monopolies. So the market is not sure how to price it initially. Does Bitcoin change the world? If so, how much, to what degree? High volatility early on. If you click that chart in the top left, it'll show you what I'm talking about. So obviously Bitcoin is more volatile than some of these other assets, but high volatility relative. If you look at that black line, that's the average of Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. And the volatility has diminished over time. So the x-axis is adjusted to their IPO, or in Bitcoin's case, it's Genesis block. Extreme volatility in that first 100 months. So the first, roughly 10 years or so. And then the volatility diminishes over time as the market's better able to understand the scope of the technology, the impact of a network effect. And then if you click the right arrow to go to the next chart, it shows the drawdown. So the largest annual percent drawdown. We've got Bitcoin in orange, and we've got some of these other tech monopolies in the other colors. And a lot of drawdowns early on. I think Amazon had 90% plus drops within its first 15 years or so of being a publicly traded asset. But Amazon doesn't have 95% drawdowns anymore. It can have a decent sized drawdown, but not 95%. And so I think because Bitcoin has traded in a similar manner to all of these other tech monopolies, I think we can reasonably interpret that this element will continue as well, with smaller drawdowns and diminishing volatility.
There's something, and I just asked that to Gemini because I was wondering how comparable the IPO of, and as we see it here, the IPO and the generation of Bitcoin is, because at the IPO of Apple and Google, there was already company history before that, and ask now just Gemini on the side of like how long does it take for the average company to get, like how long does a company exist before the IPO, and it gave me back 7 to 10 years. I have no clue if this is right, but it sounds good. So it seems like so the point I was trying to make is like how comparable is like the the Genesis block Bitcoin price towards the IPO of the company, and shouldn't those charts be like almost a little bit skewed towards the other side and like start with, I don't know, 2013, and like it's hard to like pick a starting point, I guess.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I think the parallel to draw is the market's lack of a total understanding per se. Now, of course, they did, when a company goes public, they have filings and they have revenue and they have all sorts of stuff. But a lot of these companies, they went public still in the premature days of the internet, and definitely the premature days of social media. So even when Amazon went public, I don't think anybody knew that we were going to be in a world where everyone all across the world can order something, any good they want, and have it delivered to them the next day. I don't think anybody understood that, even if they were bullish on Amazon. Same with Meta, when Facebook, the Facebook at the time, I think, went public. I don't think anybody realized we're going to have Facebook ads and Instagram and all the stuff that they've built over the years, and that it was going to be really integrated into every aspect of life. So I think the parallel really is more on the inability to fully understand the scope of the asset. But like you mentioned, there's slightly different supply and demand dynamics with Bitcoin, right? Because you didn't have, founders with existing shares being able to sell into the IPO. It was totally 100% nascent with no comparables, no pre-existing company history that predated it. So it's definitely not a one-to-one comparison, but I think given the way the market, and even, traditional finance people say this all the time, that, oh, Bitcoin's just like another tech stock. It trades just like them, which is to some extent true, even though you and I and much of the audience, I'm sure, understands the fundamental difference between Bitcoin and Apple stock, for example. But the market has treated them similarly. And so I think this is a fair comparison to look at.
Yeah, and I just looked up. Actually, like some of those companies went public really quickly. I think Amazon was it that just took 3 years. Apple like 4 years. So like those companies was a lot quicker than the average, I guess. It was also a different era, I guess.
Yeah, .com bubble was a crazy time. So I've heard. I wasn't around back then. I was still in diapers.
Me too. .com bubble, like if we take it like 2000, I was born late 1998, so I was around like 1 year, 1.5 years old at that time. Gosh. So yeah, that's interesting. And those other charts, like the other two ones, is there something interesting?
So just showing here, Bitcoin, my thesis is that the 4-year cycles are going away. Not that Bitcoin's going to suddenly become, an S&P equivalent with very low vol, 10% CAGR. Like Bitcoin's very much still the most volatile, like large scale asset class. So here it's just showing the annualized volatility relative to the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the long bond ETF, orders of magnitude more volatile. And I think it will continue to be that way. But the volatility Bitcoiners have become accustomed to and these massive booms and busts, I think those days are over.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's also the average analyzed realized volatility. It's interesting. So I like it's not that, I mean, it's far off, but it's not that, I think, Bitcoin will become super boring. And I told it actually yesterday on a podcast where I think in 20, 30 years, Bitcoin will be that asset that your grandma tells you like, oh, like get some Bitcoin, like here, put it in your savings in Bitcoin. It's kind of like the most boring asset on earth and nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah. And if you think about 20 to 30 years from now, the grandmas of that time will have seen Bitcoin just outperform everything across their entire life. And so for them, that'll be like we're not playing any games. We just want to preserve our value type of asset. And where Bitcoin becomes boring, which I hate to say that because Bitcoin is super exciting. It's the most world changing technology that exists today. But where it becomes boring in the financial sense, I think that's where Bitcoin treasury companies start to shine. And I think that's why we've seen them really take off in popularity this year. Because MicroStrategy, for example, I'll use them because I think they're doing this the best beyond anyone, is where Bitcoin has this, 50 to 60 to 100% annualized volatility. They're able to create different products that derive off of that. So if you want the high volatile asset that Bitcoin used to be, buy strategy stock or buy leverage strategy stock. I mean, I'm not saying do this, but if that's what you're craving, then you can find that. That will exist in the market. And if Bitcoin didn't have this this sort of threshold where it's now institutional grade, lower vol, but still relatively high vol, then we wouldn't see strategy be able to issue all these preferreds right there. The preferred equity is just the lower vol version of Bitcoin versus MSTR stock is the higher vol version of Bitcoin. And I don't know how much you pay attention to some of the strategy heads out there, but it seems a lot of them can't handle the higher vol. Because strategy stock is, it's been a sideways summer for them as well, but because it's a higher vol version of Bitcoin, it's gone down more. And some of those people seem to start to be losing their minds. I'm not sure if they understand what they're holding, but I'm pretty confident that once Bitcoin starts to make new highs and break into uncharted territory, that strategy stock will probably outperform it on a shorter time horizon.
I do love the watches from Coin Vigilante, but today I have a very special message, not from me, but from the CEO himself, Carlos from Coin Vigilante. Let's hear him.
To all the Robin Seyr podcast community, I'm Carlos Estrada from Coin Vigilante, and we're sponsors of the show, and we're going to give you a very special discount exclusive to you, 10% off your order at coinvigilante.com when you use Robin at checkout. We have really nice watches that you guys can buy right now for 10%. This is a transparency edition, beautiful watch. These watches are worn in over 55 countries and counting. This discount is just for you, exclusive to the Robin Seyr podcast. We have limited editions, we have limited productions. These watches come in very nice packaging, boxing material, and they are collector's item for Bitcoiners only. Enjoy the discount. Thanks for supporting the show and Coin Vigilante.
I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. Yeah, and this is probably the main reason why I don't hold strategy currently. I'm very much confident that Bitcoin will outperform everything long term. Short term or medium term, there can be things that outperform Bitcoin. And I'm especially confident that Bitcoin on a risk adjusted basis will outperform everything. And so if I look at strategy, I'm not 100% confident. I'm very confident that strategy will do drastically good, like really, really amazing. But it's still a company that has all the risks associated with a company. It has management risk, it has execution risk, it has all those risks that I don't like currently. Like, I come from that world. I come from the stock world. My portfolio was like 100% stock and like 2,000 euros on the side just to survive the next month. And everything else was always stocks. I was at one point 100% invested in Tesla. Like all my portfolio, like all my money was in Tesla. And it did quite well, but like it was extremely risky. So I know of those centralized fundamental risks that having a stock has. And just because strategy is associated with Bitcoin doesn't mean it doesn't have those risks, because it absolutely does have those stock risks. And right now I'm just like all in on Bitcoin. And at some point I think Bitcoin will become so boring that I'm like, hey, let's take like 20% or 30% of the portfolio out of Bitcoin and invest it in a new nice stock that I think will 10x, 100x, quadruple x, whatever, over the next 5, 10, 20 years. Because it's exciting. It's fun. Like, honestly, I love looking at companies and speculate where they go. But right now I just think there is nothing better to spend your energy on than Bitcoin.
Right. And you know, nobody can knock that, right? Because it's always going all in on Bitcoin has been a historically winning play, and it will continue to be a historically winning play. But I will say that what's caught my eye is that strategy, they have outperformed Bitcoin since they went on the Bitcoin standard. So they survived an entire cycle. They got intelligent leverage on Bitcoin, and they did end up outperforming. So I think it's worth having a position in, but with strategy, you don't get the benefit of full sovereignty. You don't have, 24/7, 365 liquidity on your wealth, no geographic restrictions, no trusted third parties. Bitcoin is the only true, like, freeing monetary technology. It's the only thing that I can be 100% confident will survive the next 1,000 years. And so that's why, I think Bitcoin is obviously a novel creation, and building a company on top of Bitcoin only makes sense, right? If you're strategy or any other cash flow positive business, it makes sense to accumulate Bitcoin using your free cash flows and use that as your treasury reserve asset. And when you get into the treasury, I don't want to say manipulation, but the financialization, the fiat games of trying to acquire more Bitcoin, I think it can work, but I think we're also going to see some treasury companies that fail. I don't think strategy will be one of those, but that's where you do get into this operational risk of running a business, like you mentioned. I think the Bitcoin treasury play, if we extract like using free cash flows to just save in Bitcoin, which every company should do, versus the let's play fiat games to try to increase Bitcoin per share, I think that is a viable business model, but I don't think every company trying that model will do it successfully.
Yeah, I also wondered a lot of like how many companies can do that. Like, because a lot of what strategy is doing is also providing the pipes for locked capital towards going towards Bitcoin. And this is, I mean, if you really bring it down to a simple term, it's like a service provider for pipes to have from one money pool to another. I mean, this is like highly simplified, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then it's like, how many of those do we really need? Are there like maybe 2, 3 big players? There's like, of course, like regional things like MetaPlanet with like Japan and strategy with like America. So maybe there's a European player that they can play in that game. But like, does it really need more than 1, 2 players in every region to do that? And of course, like using intelligent leverage just to buy more Bitcoin and have future profits already in the present. Like that's a whole different thing. Like this will always probably be a thing. I mean, this is in companies, like all companies have some sort of leverage, some sort of debt, where they handle things. Like even very small companies probably lease their, company, cars
Right.
and have some sort of small like debt in that case, but those big things like strategies doing those pipes, I don't know how many companies, like I don't see more the market for more than 2 or 3 companies per region naturally.
I think we'll see. I'm optimistic that we'll need more than what exists now. There's only, I say only, quote unquote, 150 Bitcoin public companies with Bitcoin on their balance sheet. There was like 60 to start the year. So it's more than doubled, which is exciting to see. But I do think there's a lot of capital out there in the world, and capital loves diversification. That's the name of the game in TradFi. And so I think you could see, 5, 6, 7, 8 different Bitcoin treasury companies per market. That doesn't mean they'll all outperform well, but this service you mentioned, they do provide a service, which is to funnel capital from the old system to the new system. I think we're going to need a lot more plumbing than what we have today.
I like that. And I just looked, we are already almost at 190, like that's bitcointreasury.net. And we are soon hitting 200 publicly traded companies that
That's incredible.
That's just, yeah, that's really incredible, honestly. Like
I want to
amazing.
say it was like 65 at the start of the year, if that. Like it's and I think this all comes on the tailwinds of like, Trump and the performance. People had very high hopes when he came into office that he would be great for markets. But I think this is definitely downstream of the deregulation of the Bitcoin industry within the United States and I guess crypto more broadly. I don't think it's a coincidence that once he got into office, you see this explosion in companies, publicly traded companies willing to stick their neck out and acquire some Bitcoin.
Yeah, I was searching for a chart. Oh, is it here? Is that the chart of like, private companies? I'm only exchanges. No, no, that's not the chart. But it would be fun to see like a chart of like how, the amount of how many publicly traded companies that have some sort of, investment in Bitcoin is actually growing. I've no clue how many it was in the beginning of the year, but yeah, I think it was definitely under 100, which is a tremendous growth. And,
I can find the exact number. Actually, I put it in one of our our start of the year forecast. Here we go. It was, the exact number it was 64. At the start of 2024, it was 43, and at the start of 2025, it was 64. So yeah, that's over a 3x increase if we're at 190 today.
Yeah, that's literally like that's really good.
Yeah.
64. Yeah, that's a 3x. That's crazy. You also, one thing from your report that probably people really also love to talk about is future potential price. I forgot to like put it on there. This is really interesting. I love those charts. Like they always look so great. The 3D model ones. What are you kind of like expecting for the Bitcoin price?
Yeah. So if you jump to the next chart in this thread real quick, this is the realized cap. So this is Bitcoin's capital inflows effectively on chain. So it leaves a footprint on chain. It's the value of every Bitcoin multiplied by the price of Bitcoin at the time they last moved. So it recently surpassed $1 trillion, which is fantastic. More than $1 trillion has been entrusted to the Bitcoin network to be stored. And you can see after the ETF in January of 2024, it's been straight up and to the right. It's increased by over $500 billion in the last, 17 or 18, 19, 20 months or something since January of last year. And on an annualized basis, it's grown at the ironic number, $420 billion over the last 12 months. And so the green line there just takes that growth rate and extrapolates it into the future. So for one, I will say the growth rate could increase. If we get more Bitcoin treasury company plumbing, like you mentioned, the actual service of providing a an avenue for capital to go from the fiat world to the Bitcoin world, that could increase the rate of inflows. Another thing that could increase the rate of inflows is simple expansion of the global money supply. So there's a lot of things that could accelerate the rate capital comes into the Bitcoin network. But for simplicity's sake and to be conservative, let's say the current rate just continues into the future, which I think is a bearish case, but we'll run with that. And if you take that, that gives, by 2030, Bitcoin will have a realized cap of more than 2.5 trillion. And so if you go to the previous chart, you can do some quick math here. So at 2.5 trillion, a third of the way between the 2 and the 4 there, then you multiply by the market cap to realized cap ratio, and that gives you the market cap. You divide by 21 million, you get Bitcoin price on the z-axis there. You're looking between $250,000 to $350,000 per Bitcoin if inflows continue to come into the market at the same rate. And so I'll elaborate to the MVRV multiple that oscillates. So that just is, how is the market reacting to these capital inflows? Because sometimes the market, Bitcoin gets a surge of capital inflows and it reacts wildly and you get this huge multiplier. And other times it doesn't react as much. And so this is the range after the ETF. It's been between 1.8x and 2.5x above the realized cap. And so if we take that range, you could see a Bitcoin price on the low end, 250K. On the high end, you could see it, 350 to 400K. So I don't like to make like specific price predictions associated with the time, because I think Bitcoin's just going up. But this chart, I think, gives people kind of a more grounded conceptual way to think about this. Is how much capital does Bitcoin absorb, and then what's the market going to put a multiple on that? If on the high end, if Bitcoin gets $10 trillion of capital, we could see a price of Bitcoin at $1 million. But if capital continues to come in at the rate it has, I think a reasonable case over the next 4 to 5 years would be around $300,000 per Bitcoin, which we could do some simple CAGR math. I think that would be probably a 25 to 30% CAGR over the next few years, which would be a fantastic return. I don't think I would be mad if 2030 rolls around and Bitcoin's at 350K.
Absolutely not. And it's also, that's why I said when we go back and see the CAGR that we have over the last 12 months, we just have like a 99%. That's crazy. So that's why I think it's absurd if anyone says we're in a bear market, but I can see where they're coming from. Like I see where the sentiment feels like a bear market.
Yeah, it's sentiment wise, it does. But if you've been buying since the FTX imploded, you're up over 5x from then. The low was under 20K and Bitcoin is almost at 120K. So it's people who have been doing what you should do, which is to just accumulate Bitcoin every day, every week, every month, whatever your cadence is, regularly, consistently acquire Bitcoin. If you've been doing that over the last few years, you have crushed it. You've outperformed almost every hedge fund in the world. You've outperformed the S&P by an order of magnitude. You've outperformed all the shitcoin bag holders. The recipe has never really changed, and it's still as simple as it's ever been, which is accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can and stay solvent so you don't have to sell that Bitcoin if you don't have to.
How does the whole nation state race play into that? Like just the rumors that America might buy, just the rumors that like things kind of progress on the nation state level because they have the biggest pockets, I would guess. I mean, like Apple can probably compete with a lot of nation states, but like nation states have the money printers.
Yeah, I think it is a slow moving horse that is still present. So governments are not notoriously quick, and especially with adopting something like Bitcoin, I think by design, nation states will be the last to really kind of girth into Bitcoin, so to speak. I mean, you have your El Salvadors of the world, but like, let's be honest, Apple going all in on Bitcoin would be a bigger impact than a lot of these third world nations. And so I think what you got to look at is, the United States is really the one that matters. And I think that will happen on a state by state level. You're going to see some states take a modest position into Bitcoin and might not really move the price too much, but what it does is it's continued legitimization of Bitcoin by institutions, which is a green flag to other institutions, or I don't want to call people sheep, but the sheep of the world that need institutional thumbs up before they make a new decision or adopt kind of a new technology. And so I think that's really the signal in terms of nation state adoption, is just that they're giving the stamp of approval that, all right, we concede, we can't shut Bitcoin down. We're just going to get some, and that's what it's going to be.
You also mentioned, I don't know if it was before or after we started recording. No, it was before. Yeah, the big beautiful bill of Trump, and what does this mean also for miners and for Bitcoin overall?
Yeah, so I'll start with the high level, which the kind of macro level. The big beautiful bill is a huge spending bill, and as Lynn Alden says, the train doesn't stop. And so I think that's signal one: is doesn't matter who's in office, red or blue, they're going to continue to run these massive deficits, which at the end of the day will be financed by money printing. You can debate on the language, or so to speak, or the actual mechanisms. They're issuing bonds and whatnot, but it's money printing at the end of the day. They're spending more money than they generate through taxation revenue. So red or blue doesn't matter. They're going to spend. Now, second is the big beautiful bill has an interesting clause that is very, very bullish for Bitcoin miners on a public and private level. So what it does, it creates 100% bonus depreciation for ASICs. So this means you could write off 100% of the cost of mining hardware in a single tax year. And this comes from Trump obviously has a huge background in commercial real estate. And it was kind of on the basis of that we get this depreciation schedule for mining. So with the real estate, one of the biggest reasons people hold the asset beyond, it's an inflation hedge and it generates cash flow, is the tax write-offs. So if you have $1 billion worth of real estate, you can write off a lot of income. And that's where you got these famous headlines a couple of years ago that Trump paid zero in income taxes. He wasn't breaking any laws. He wasn't running from the IRS. He was using the existing tax code to his advantage. He had enough real estate where he could write off the depreciation of the buildings. They physically depreciate. You got to do renovations. You got to do all sorts of stuff that can offset income. And so he was able to do that. But with real estate, the depreciation schedule is, I think it's 39 years. So it's either 29 or 39 years. Either way, it's multiple decades. So you got to write the property off over the course of multiple decades. It's, breaks down to like a couple percent every year. So you need a lot of real estate to write off any significant amount of income. But with Bitcoin mining, if you buy $100,000 of ASICs, year one, you can write off $100,000 of income. So that's a total game changer for Bitcoin mining. It really opens up the door to a lot of creative strategies, and it makes this comparison of Bitcoin mining to real estate a lot more favorable, because on one hand, you have an asset, commercial real estate, long depreciation schedule, cash flows that can be somewhat inconsistent. You have tenants, you have maintenance, you have property taxes, all this other stuff. Versus Bitcoin mining, you buy the ASICs. If you're using someone like Blockware, we offer a Bitcoin mining CapEx light model, we call it. You're not buying the infrastructure, you're not buying the transformers, the energy production assets. You're just buying the hardware, which you can write off. And then this generates Bitcoin denominated cash flow. So you're getting an asset that is correlated to Bitcoin on the upside and gives you these tax write-offs. It's really a huge catalyst for Bitcoin mining. And at Blockware, we've seen a lot of people start to take advantage of this.
I think it's amazing because it really shows, and you know it better than me, but from all what I hear from America is the hostile environment really shifted completely from being against Bitcoin to being like as much as possible for Bitcoin since Trump came into office. And a lot of people criticize maybe like his meme coins, like some maybe politics he does, and that he does spend money. And I'm like, of course, like he spent a lot in his first term, he will spend a lot in his second term, but this was all I kind of expected it. It was kind of, if you think about the Donald Trump coming into office and being a Bitcoin president, it was very highly unlikely that he would be a Bitcoin maxi president. Like I didn't expect it at all. So what I expected is like, yeah, he will make it easier for Bitcoin businesses. And I think he kind of fulfilled that promise. And I always have to kind of disclaimer, like, I'm not in America, like I'm in Austria, but I talk with the podcast with a lot of Americans.
Yeah.
Is that also your kind of understanding that like all those hostile environments that we had before with Biden kind of went away now with Trump?
Yeah, they absolutely did. Even at Blockware, we got rug pulled by just like an email provider. I think it was called MailChimp. They kicked us off because we were a Bitcoin business during the kind of Biden induced crackdown. I know there was like a Bitcoin club at a university that got kicked off MailChimp. Not to mention all of the debanking, all the Bitcoin companies that got kicked off of some of the traditional financial rails under the Biden administration. And I don't like to get political either necessarily, but it has been a lot more smooth sailing with Trump in office, and it gives, like I mentioned before, I think it's not a coincidence that we have seen this increase in Bitcoin treasury companies, because if you're a public operator under the Biden administration, it was not clear that you could really devote a core part of your business and your treasury to Bitcoin, given all of the strict regulations. But now with Trump, it's, full steam ahead on the Bitcoin industry. And unfortunately, that does come with the side effect of the crypto industry as well, which I don't particularly care for, but I would rather, it be a full free market with no regulation. I think Bitcoin doesn't need the government to shut down crypto for Bitcoin to win. I think Bitcoin is the superior monetary technology. I think its market cap reflects that, its trading volume, its on-chain activity. All of this is and its hash rate. There's no shortage of metrics that show Bitcoin is the dominant digital asset. And I think in a total free market, that everyone will figure that out, even the shitcoiners.
Before we go to end of and I fully agree with you on everything you just said there. But before we go to the end routine of the podcast, I want to bring up one more tweet that you put out there, and I love that tweet, by the way. You said, "Praise Jesus, start a family, lift heavy weights, and stack Bitcoin." I haven't started a family with kids. That's the only thing that's really missing. But I'm on it with my girlfriend. And I'm not that religious, but I'm getting to be way more religious with the podcast, which is an interesting side quest that I'm on with my viewers here since like almost 2 years now, that I was very much apolitical, religious, and was not into religion at all when I started the podcast. And now I'm like, oh yeah, like there's a lot to it, and maybe I'm actually rejoining the church. Talk to me of like the adjacent benefits or the adjacent topics to being a Bitcoiner, like lifting heavy weights, like starting family, embrace Jesus.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and that's exciting to hear. You're becoming more religious the more you talk to people, and I think that's not a coincidence, because you're just seeking truth, right? I've been on the show before. You're having honest conversations, trying to learn more about the world and understand things. And fundamentally, I believe this in the bottom of my heart. Jesus Christ died on a cross, and then he rose from the dead. That is a historical fact. It happened. And I think the more you dig, you realize that happened. And those four things, it's kind of a simple recipe, but it's totally transformed my life. I started doing all of these things 4 or 5 years ago, and night and day difference in how I feel, the outcome of my life, my relationships with people around me. So, yeah, praise Jesus, start a family. I'm working on that. I'm getting married in a little under 30 days from now. Stack Bitcoin and lift heavy weights. Man. Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited. It's weird because I'm 25 years old, and this is viewed as young for getting married today. But if I got married at 25, 100 years ago, I'd be like the grandpa in the room doing that. But I think this is the way that I was listening to Michael Jackson's "Man in the Mirror" today, and it made me think of this tweet, because it's very easy to get hung up on the macro problems in the world. What are the governments doing? What's the central bank doing? What is Hollywood and academia doing? But we don't really have any control over that. You can't impact these broader forces necessarily, but you can improve your own life on a personal basis. You can take personal responsibility. And these are all 4 very simple things that anybody can do, and it will drastically improve your life. And I couldn't recommend it more.
I'm asking a question that has absolutely nothing to do with Bitcoin. And I know most people here that listen to are probably already married or in the age where they probably should already be married, because I know like the average viewer is like 40, 45 years old. But for the few young men that are listening, and I talk with so many of my Gen Z friends about that, I was like, I have not a lot of friends that are younger than me that are married, even in my age. And you're 25, I'm 27. I just got 27 last week, so I'm like I'm just young enough to be Gen Z still. And this question is like, why? Like, there's two things. The first thing would be interesting. Like, how did you decide to get married? Of like, what was the decision thing for you? And the second thing of like, why do you think it is that the marriage age is kind of progressing upwards, and has this anything to do with money and like getting later to universities and like all those things?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first, which is it absolutely has everything to do with the money, and I don't think it's talked about enough. I've talked to, I'm in the same boat. I'm 25. None of my friends are married. I'm like the first one getting married, pretty much. It's the money, dude. A lot of people our age, they still live with roommates. They don't feel financially secure enough for themselves, let alone bringing in a wife into the picture and then children after that. And it's, if you go to WTF happened in 1971.com, there's a bunch of charts that show this. Since we went off the gold standard, the age that people get married increases, the age that people have their kids increases, the number of kids per household decreases. All these things that point to the deterioration of the family, and a lot of things get blamed when really the core of it is it's just money. I think everybody they want to find love, they want to get married, they want to build a family, have kids, extend their progeny out generations and generations. But when you're just struggling to find enough money to pay rent and to put gas in your car and to buy groceries, people are unable to think for the long term. And so, unfortunately, I think this problem will only get worse over the coming years, because most of our peers, they don't have Bitcoin. Unfortunately, they should. And that's what we do. We try to educate them. Hey, if you save in Bitcoin, this problem where things get more expensive turns upside down. Things actually go down in price over time. And if it wasn't for Bitcoin, I'm not sure I would be getting married, because I don't think I would have the financial peace of mind to get married. It's not even like, I'm not 25, I'm not rich or anything, but I just have the understanding that, things will continue to get cheaper. I can do this, as long as I keep my expenses less than my income and save in Bitcoin, like long term, I'm good. So, I can go ahead and take a position of responsibility like this right now. And on top of that, I think it's a mindset of, before I even met my soon to be wife, I was ready to get married, in the sense that, hey, it wasn't like, oh, she came along. It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to get married or not. It's like, before I even met her, it's like, this is what I'm looking for. I know a lot of the people older than me that I look up into in my life. One of the things I hear most frequently is, I wish I got married sooner. I wish I had kids sooner. And so I didn't want to make that same mistake. It's like, hey, let's just do it now. I don't want to miss years with my future children on the back end because I waited and didn't have children at a younger age, even though perfectly capable of doing that. So I'm super excited about it. I think everyone, especially Bitcoiners, should start a family, because that's how we can really impact the world. If we have, we are Generation Z, then it was Generation Alpha. I think it's a Generation Beta next. Perhaps the generation after that we can call Generation Bitcoin. Yeah, no, it's not too late to change it. I think we should do it.
Yeah. If I'm correct, those are the people that are born in 2025, the Generation B?
Yeah. So 2010 to 2025 was Alpha, and now Beta started in 2025.
So if you think about that, 2025, if someone is born in 2025, so the first year of Generation B, Generation Bitcoin, as I call it, when they will be in an age where they encounter money, like let's say 18, 21 years old, this is kind of the age where you like get your first job, like maybe with 16, maybe you're a hustler and you're like with 12, like selling on the street lemonade and stuff like that. Then you get it a little bit earlier, but like most people on average encounter like all those money things around 20 years old. So seeing now how much Bitcoin achieved from 0 to 16 years old, it's like, what can happen in 20 years. This is the whole time that Bitcoin was alive, plus 4 years more. This is kind of amazing to think about. So that's why I'm thinking generation Bitcoin, because the generation that is born right now, 2025 up until like 2030, 2035, whatever the sequence is, this will be a Bitcoin generation because there will be an upbringing in a Bitcoin world, basically, where Bitcoin is the dominant asset. We can already see it on the horizon that Bitcoin will overtake gold. It's not that far off. It's far off. It's like a 10x or more than that from here. But it will happen before a kid that is born now have the chance to like spend money with 21 years old.
Yeah, it is crazy to think about. And it puts into perspective how much Bitcoin has already accomplished when it's only 16 years old. Genesis block was January 2009, and we already have it being not a staple in the Wall Street portfolio, but it's not unorthodox. You would no longer be ostracized for recommending a Bitcoin position to clients. And so another 16, 18, 20 years. Yeah, I think Bitcoin captures gold's market cap by then. Man, these kids are going to be lucky to be born into a world where the knock-on effects of weak money might be behind us. We'll see.
That's why Generation B is Generation Bitcoin. We have to advertise that more and more. Really cool. Thank you so much, Mitch. We have one question to ask each and every one of my returning guests, and the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance?
It's a great question. I will speak to, I know a lot of people have talked about this, but the Charlie Kirk assassination, very sad, very tragic experience. But by divine providence, my pastor on Sunday, he preached from a chapter in Revelation 6. Now, if for those who are unfamiliar, Revelation is the last book in the Bible. It's a very prophetic book, and it's probably one of the, if not the single most difficult book in the Bible to interpret. But what it is it's John, who wrote the book of John, one of Jesus's disciples. He wrote about these visions he was having. And in one of the visions, there are 7 seals. There's a scroll, and it has 7 seals to keep the scroll from being opened. And the 5th seal, he looks into the seal and he sees martyrs. He sees early Christians from AD 30 after the crucifixion and the resurrection to AD 70 when the temple was destroyed. During this time period, a lot of Christians that were killed. They were brutally, heads cut off, crucified upside down, all sorts of terrible stuff. And he's looking at the seal and he sees these martyrs. He's having this vision. And the martyrs are like, God, when is there going to be justice? When is there going to be retribution for all these evil people that have killed us? And it was by pure coincidence that we've been going through the book of Revelation, and this was just a sermon that was written weeks before, and then he's preaching it the couple of days after Charlie Kirk's assassination. So very, very coincidental timing there with that. But it speaks to, justice is delivered on evil, and there's a lot of evil in the world. There's a lot of things going wrong, but I am fully confident that God's divine justice will be administered onto all of the evil in the world. One of the things that for me helped me become a Christian was just witnessing evil. It's right. If there's all this evil and brokenness and destruction in the world, then there has to be good on the other side of that. And that good comes from God, from the Trinity, who embodies love, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so that's something I've learned recently, and hopefully I articulated that well enough for you to understand what I'm trying to say.
I love that. And I also think the message of Charlie Kirk, no matter if you agree or not, will be amplified through those actions that the shooter did. So I really think that this was an attempt to silence someone, and they weren't successful, because there will be now 5, 10, hundreds of thousands of new Charlie Kirks along the way. And Charlie Sheen actually talked about that on news, which I found hilarious, because I watched 2.5 Men all the time when I was younger. And he talked about that the Charlie Kirk assassination is the new moment from RFK from the RFK assassination. So this is kind of the new a youth moment for that. Like it's a moment from the youth there, and it could be true to some extent. It's an interesting thought of like what it means and what it represents. And I also think this will be well be spoken about in a long time in the future, and it will amplify his message and not weaken it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'm already seeing in my own life all the young people around me being galvanized by this. Yeah, I think you're right. We're going to create another million Charlie Kirks because of this. Because they think about this guy, he was, for all intents and purposes, kind of a moderate. He was not like extremely radical. He had a very simple message, which is like, hey, you probably don't have to go to college. College is kind of a scam. Socialism is bad. Start a family. Let's have conversations. Let's have dialogue. And so one of the more mild right-wing people among us getting, assassinated in that fashion in public in front of his family, in front of thousands of people, very much activated the more radical among us. And so I think ultimately this justice will be brought to the killer and those behind this. And I think good will come from this. It says in the book of Romans, all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord. And I think, it's a bit of a cliche verse in times of darkness, but I think it's true. I think good will ultimately come from this.
And we have an endogen, I fully agree. And we have an endogen in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, oh God, that will be a fun one. Would you rather be able to fly, like not with a plane, like just flying with your body, or being able to go back in time, but being capped by 1 minute? So basically the one situation is where you cannot just always fly wherever you want to fly and just like out of the window and fly. And the second one is like, you can go back in time, but only 1 minute back. So not like going back in 1995 for 1 minute, but just like from now on, like 1 minute ago, you can go back in time.
When you say something stupid and you realize, I shouldn't have said that, you can unwind 60 seconds and redo, basically.
Yeah, or see the outcome of a bet, go back 60 seconds and bet on it. Like where you want to take it from that.
That's a good use case, actually. I didn't come to mind, but you could totally like place live bets on stuff and that sort of thing. Now, if I can,
or even say like, if you see a car accident and there's a guy that gets crashed, you rewind 60 seconds, you pull him aside, and like it doesn't happen.
Right. I don't know. Flying would be great, dude, because I hate traffic. I hate sitting around and, my town is pretty like geographically dense, but there's a lot of traffic. Just driving 4 or 5 miles down the road, it can take 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on the time of day. So if I could just fly around town, that would be great. Now, if I could carry someone with me, and so I could travel, bring my fiance or something, we could fly across town, I think I would take that. But if I could only fly by myself, I don't think that would be as fun, because then everybody else still has to drive. So, and if I could take someone with me, I choose flying. But if I can't, then I choose the rewinding 60 seconds.
It's also a question of like, if I can fly, how fast can I fly? Can I fly like I walk, or can I fly like a plane? I have a lot of questions.
If I could go like the speed of a bicycle, I would be cool with that, because you could go 20 miles an hour or so on a bike if you're really pedaling. So if I could go 20 miles an hour flying, give me that.
That would be awesome, man. Well, perfect. And thank you so much, Mitch, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mitchell Hodl, MITCHELLHODL. I'm always available. You can send me a DM. We can talk Bitcoin. If you're interested in Bitcoin mining, make sure to shoot me a DM. It's great whether you're a W-2 income earner or you have a business that you earn income through. Everybody in the United States can take advantage of the 100% appreciation. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely shoot me a DM.
Awesome. Really cool. And we already showed, and I want to say that, because I still get questions, since the first ever episode, and we have now over 600 episodes. Since the first ever episode, I always put one contact link, and it's usually Twitter, in the description of the guest. And still I get questions like, oh, like, where can I contact him? So make sure to just go to the description. You can directly go to his profile. And I mean, we've shown even your Twitter profile today already on the screen, so you can also directly see that. And so, yeah, thank you so much, Mitch, for being on. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.